And I believe we have with us Miss Emma Hippolyte, and she's joining us, I believe, from Soufra, in fact. And it's good that we can, of course, persons who are following on our Facebook live feed will be able to actually see Miss Hippolyte because they'll be able to see her live and direct. But of course, Miss Hippolyte, thanks very much. Are you hearing us?
Yes, Connie, thank you. And I see you give a lot of information as usual, well researched about our beautiful part of St. Lucia. Good evening, St. Lucia. Good evening, Soufra. Good afternoon, Soufra. Um, we are live at this end. I'm way up in Jacques.
Oh, you're up in Force Jacques today.
I'm in Jacques because I have a funeral at 2, so I had sort of had to put myself in a location that after the show I could quickly get on to the church. But I'm now in our little Jacques office. We've decided that Jacques is extremely important for us, so we have a little sub-office in Jacques.
Well, wonderful. And Force Jacques is the gateway to the rainforest and the parrot reserve and all of that. Right?
Exactly, yes. Exactly.
Now, of course, Ms. Hippolyte, I mean, you've got a very long career, director of audit in the St. Lucia government, also former consultant at the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, director of the National Insurance Corporation here in St. Lucia. But of course, you then delved into politics with running, I think, in 2011 for that election and becoming the Member of Parliament for Gros-Islet. At that time, I think running against Mr. Leonard Spider-Montoute, defeating him, I think, at the end of the day after a recount by 7 votes. And
that's
becoming
correct.
St. Lucia's Minister for Commerce, Consumer Affairs and Investment. But I think also you have a lot of interest in Soufra, coming from that area and being as well the owner of an estate in close by. I'm not sure if it's in Soufra, but close enough.
Yes, it is. It is bordering Soufra and Choiseul.
It's actually in Choiseul, yes.
Yeah.
So tell us about Soufra, though, and tell us a little bit about your life growing up there and why you've decided to head back to your roots, so to speak.
Well, one correction, I never say to head back to the roots. I've never left the roots. We stray, I have my whole life here, preschool, primary school, part of my secondary school in Soufra. I left Soufra when I went to the for Louis at that time, the Mont Fortune Technical College to study secretarial science. That's what caused my move up to Castries. After that, my first job from leaving Mont Fortune Technical College was actually in Gros-Islet, and at a place, by that time I was working for Fintanburg, and that office was at a building owned by Michael Gordon. And the name for the place was Villa Lobos. It's sort of at the back of where you have Nagico Insurance there, inside of that area there. So my connection with Gros-Islet stemmed a long time. After that, I lived in Castries, New Village and Coral Street, and So after a while, I continued. I bought a property, my actual home. I bought a home up in Gros-Islet. So almost 40 years ago, I bought my house as a young professional. I thought I needed to own my home. I bought a house. I bought a piece of land in Tuya, Gros-Islet, and then I constructed a house in there. I worked in Castries all the time, but I went back to Soufra every weekend. My parents ran a grocery shop in Soufra. And I went to that grocery shop every day. I still go to the grocery shop every morning when I go to church every morning in Soufra. I still pop into the grocery shop because that grocery shop is over 70 years old. And it is still serving the community of Soufra. Some of the things that I did in Soufra that I right now I'm meeting the persons who benefited from it. I know my deceased sister was the principal of the Suffra Girls Primary School. And one of the things she used to do by coming back home, she always lamented the fact that the children came to school without meals, and some of the children had challenges with school supplies and so on. And I joined with her and a few others and from the Concerned Citizens for Deprived Children. And at that time, we focused on children from Barron's Drive and the Palmis area. And we technically gave them, but it was a full scholarship. We gave them meals, we gave them uniform, we had them for summer workshops, we had counseling sessions for them. We also had the children who benefited were also from Fort Jacques School, because we had the principal there, and that was the late Mrs. Irene Shalmine. And then we also had Etangs, and that principal was Mrs. Herminia Bob St. Hill. So we met as a group and decided that we needed to support the children that were in need. And that was before the government really had a school feeding program or anything like that. So we had to pay for the meals of these children. And after some discussion now, I am pleasantly surprised at some of the children who benefited from that program. I'll not call their names, but they are now calling me to say, I was part of that program. So you touch the lives of people in different ways. So these are some of the things I would say that has caused me to want to go back and to give back. Because when you walk the streets, and whether it is in Soufra, Beaufort, Gros-Islet, or Castries, when you walk the streets and you encounter young people, you need to be able to feel their energy. Sometimes, without question, you can engage a young person and know that that person needs some guidance. And that is what I do. I do it all the time. So for Soufra, for me, it is home, High Street where I was born, Victoria Street where we lived for a long time. Now we are in new development. But I can walk into any house in Soufra. Those who vote yellow, those who vote SLP, it doesn't bother me. There are persons on both sides that are my friends, and I engage them. I don't let the politics get involved with my relationship with people.
Now, Ms. Hippolyte, you were just, of course, talking about young people and the challenges that some of them are having. We're seeing what is going on right now in terms of the crime in St. Lucia. Of course, after this very bloody weekend that we just went through, Pentecost weekend, 4 persons having died. We're seeing some hot spots in the case of Dennery and V4 as well, but even in Jacmel. Not so much from Soufra, but
a few months ago, we were seeing that same type of problem surfacing in Soufra. But now it is very quiet in Soufra at the moment.
Right, but certainly crime has been a problem in the past, and especially that issue of a lot of persons go down yachts, go down there, and we've heard of issues with that as well. Robberies on yachts. We've had situations where tourists have been attacked. This issue of finding that balance between engaging individuals, getting persons to see that opportunity in the tourism product, seems to have been a problem that we still continue to face. This idea that the tourist just drives through Soufra en route to some resort somewhere, or maybe to the Sulphur Springs, or they come onto the yacht, the jetty, and they get whisked off to another site. Overcoming that is going to take quite a bit of work, no doubt.
Well, yes, but it is also one of the areas that I have placed on my 10-point plan, because you are correct. If the structure of the tourism industry at the moment is an area that we have to look at, and you have some major players in the industry, and they must understand that they need to share that industry. They need to restructure the industry to cause the revenue from that industry to trickle down. They need to understand that they need to cause that industry to touch the lives of the ordinary men and women of the country in a better way than we are doing it at the moment. You are correct. This is going to require. It's going to be a challenge, but I believe that when the owners of these large institutions, large organizations realize that the peace we need, you cannot have a vibrant tourism industry if you have high crime. And if they sit down and understand that, then they will know and understand that they need to sit with the government of the day and the young people to restructure, and the communities actually, to restructure the product in a way that the persons, for example, I am sitting in Fonchejak now. You have a whole set of things that can happen here in terms of tourism. How do we work with the various hotels in the Suffra area and the hotels in Cashews and the tour operators to ensure that the visitor gets up to Fonchejak, get up to Mini, get up to Derache, and some of that money remains there so that the young people in Fonchejak, Mini can get employment and can get into the agricultural sector. And as long as they are happy, then that high level of crime we have should not be there like that. I think it's a lot of work to be done, but I believe that if all of us put our country first, it's going to happen.
Now, of course, one of those requirements that you need for economic activity is land. And
yes,
in Soufra, especially, land seems to be somewhat of a scarce resource. A lot of it is tied up, of course. The owners, long-standing owners for a very, very long time. A lot of these old estates. Sometimes you have these issues of family land as well, which impacts on people's access to it. I mean, you were saying, for instance, 40 years ago, as a young professional, you went out and you bought a piece of land and you built your house.
Yes.
How easy is that right now for young people to be able to go out and actually get a piece of land, whether for a residential use, for their home, or maybe even for a business for investment?
And that is why you're very correct, very, very difficult, both in terms of availability and in terms of purchasing power. And that is why it is one of the points on my 10-point plan that we need to ensure that as a government, especially for the people in Soufra, Fonchejak, that constituency, that we sit together and what I would call our local proud. Because, you know, other parts of St. Lucia, we have Crown lands and government have come in, the Central Labour Party government in particular, have come in and put that proud system in place that has allowed people to own a piece of St. Lucia. Soufra is different. The lands are privately owned, large estates, and some large families. And we have to sit down as a government, a St. Lucia Labour Party government must sit down and put a system in place that will cause some of our young people in Soufra to be able to purchase a piece of land and own whether it's a house or an apartment based on what it is. That is one of the items for us. Because when you look at our young people in Soufra, the bulk of them are employed in the tourism industry. Their salaries, some of them not going more than $2,500. Now, with that type of salary, unless you have a program get towards ensuring that those persons own something, they'll never own anything. So the government must sit, we must sit, and I'm committed to sitting with the government, with the Prime Minister, Honorable Philip J. Pierre, to see how our young people in Soufra will be owning a piece of Soufra and a piece and have something that is theirs. Also, in terms of access to agricultural land, again, in engaging with the people of Fonchejak, they have identified areas where we have very good agricultural land and no road access. For example, they mentioned the area of River Doré. Might be over 100 acres of agricultural land, but there's no road access.
You're talking about River Doré in Choiseul?
No, there's a River Doré in Fonchejak.
Oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that.
Yes, that's right. and they need access, road access to it. So again, with a St. Lucia Labour Party government, I've placed this on the agenda so that we can see how best we can have open access to River Dore, and also how we pay attention to the Derash Road to cause more of the persons having access to their lands, and that they can have a vehicle to carry their inputs and their products out.
But coming back to the issue of the town itself, Ms. Hippolyte,
yes.
I mean, we've seen some efforts by different governments over the years to improve the look and feel of the town, the Soufra waterfront, the Soufra Square. There's recent investment of the Hummingbird Beach Park, as well the market, I think it's called, the market, and the Old Trafford site, that is.
Yes.
I wanted to speak a little bit more about that, because it seems still that we are underutilizing that whole resort town potential of this of Soufra itself.
I agree with you. You have the Old Trafford site, which is the market. When Honorable Harold Dalson presented that plan, which was the market and bus stop, what the current government has done with Honorable Harold Stanislas is to change it around and put the bus stop before the market. But Harold Dalson had it in the market first, which is closer to the road, and the bus stop at the back. So that is what has happened. The square, as you know, Harold had started that square to transform the town. It was completed by Honorable Harold Stanislas. But the waterfront is an area that we have not touched properly. I saw of late that the PAL rep has allowed a small structure to be placed there. But with that waterfront, starting from Barron's Drive down to almost where the old market was, presents a golden opportunity to transform the town, because we have this entire seafront that we can use in a much better way for ourselves, for citizens, and also for the visitor. We have not used that waterfront properly, and I can visualize how we can transform that waterfront. It's going to take some money. Might not be something that we can do in our first term in office because of the limited resources that is there. But this waterfront, the Soufra waterfront, requires a significant transformation. It requires a significant transformation. There are other things. When you look at the whole town hall, for example, it is there, not utilized. This is a building that is there. Soufra, the people of Soufra, for example, when you look at services, for example, you have, it's election time now, the electoral office has placed an office in Soufra, but the registrar of births is in Castries. So we have endless pain in Soufra. Somebody needing an ID has to do 10 trips to Castries to get a birth certificate, and then when that person goes up, then they have to come back with their mother, then they have to come back with their father, then they have to come back with mother and father birth certificate. So they go up, and hundreds of dollars are spent to try to get a decent birth certificate before an ID is received. The people of Soufra are not being properly serviced by central government. And if anybody is thinking, if the parliamentary rep was thinking of the people of Soufra, if you have an ID office in Soufra, then in the same building, because there is space, there should have been a desk for the registrar of civil status, or whatever the correct name is, where somebody should come in, be able to rectify the issues of birth certificates right there. But the poor people from Soufra have to be spending $10 up or $8 up, $8 down, and making numerous trips. It is a poor service, and I intend to correct that.
But coming back to this issue again, Ms. Hippolyte, of ownership, of tourism ownership, because we seem to still have the situation where some people have a share in the tourism industry, especially in terms of the accommodation sector.
Yeah.
And I know we've been seeing a lot of changes in terms of Airbnb, in terms of we're hearing about village tourism. But of course, that comes with its pros and cons too, because it's going to have implications for even the lots and the buildings in the town. If people are now going to be converting these into bed and breakfasts, it therefore means that people may very well have to find other places to live.
No, but Calix, now we did some research, and Soufra, in terms of rooms, now I have not dissect what is behind those numbers, because I suspect some hotels have actually registered as Airbnb. But Soufra has over 200 registered Airbnb as now. People, a lot of rooms in Soufra.
200, you say? Okay, I wasn't aware of the exact statistics.
Yes.
But what I'm saying
They've got a high registration.
Well, and is that reaching people? Are people actually benefiting from that right now, given with the COVID?
Well, before COVID, yes. Before COVID, yes, but after COVID, with all the changes and to complicate it, we've heard from the Honorable Prime Minister that he now wants the visitor to pay a special tax when they occupy, when they have accommodation at an Airbnb. Now, that is going to have serious implications, because don't forget, Airbnb are the persons who are, how we call it, low-cost travelers, and we are competing with the world. So if we get ourselves into a tax that is not competitive, then we will not be able to hold our own market.
Now, Mr. Hippolyte, we're due for a break at this time. We're going to take our weather news. Hopefully you can stay on the line with us, and we'll be back in just about a few minutes. And welcome back to the lunchroom. And of course, we're speaking with the candidate for the St. Lucia Labour Party for Soufra Force Jacques. She is Miss Emma Hippolyte, and she's going up for a seat that has at some point been even sought after by the current Prime Minister. He also tried, I think, back in 2011 to win the hearts of the people of Soufra, unsuccessfully though, Miss Hippolyte.
Yes, the people of Soufra, we are very particular set of people. Somehow they did not like the Prime Minister. They did not like the Honorable Alan Chasney.
Now, Ms. Hippolyte, of course, there is a part of the community that is very much dependent upon the sea for fishing. Certainly, the places like Queles, Barons Drive. Of course, you've got the fisheries down in Soufra as well. I think recently I noticed that you were doing something in terms of setting up a fish aggregating device for the fishers in the Soufra area.
Yes, and with COVID, the fishermen got a hit. The government did not pay attention to them. And as you know, when you think of food security, our fishers are important in terms of ensuring we have the right protein. And the people of Barons Drive are fishers. They are also very strong supporters of the St. Lucia Labour Party. But taking them as fishers, we felt that they were being hit on different grounds. We had the issue of the government placing $1.50 on the gallon of gas. Now, as you know, as fishers, they have to purchase gas, go out to sea. If they are lucky, they get a good catch, or for the day, they might come back without anything. So they were being squeezed from that end so that the expenditure was increased. And at the same time, the government decided to prevent them from selling the fish in whatever space it was. So you had the Soufra fishers, after they come from sea, they return from sea, then had to try to sell that fish. And to sell it, we have pictures of fishermen pushing a barrow up to Force Jacques. That is 4 miles out. That's not been fair to the fisher, because he's already risking his life going out to.
It looks like we have some technical issues here with.
Yeah, so, okay,
are you there? Okay, we got you back now.
Yeah. So we should not have had, they should not be placed at that, with
So the
that
whole
challenge. So
privatization of the fisheries has certainly impacted
also
their
impacted
ability
other
to
features.
sell their fish.
That's right, to sell the fish. So what, when we had a meeting and a discussion with them, they felt that they needed help in terms of installing a FAD. And that's the response. We came together with them, assisted in buying the material that they needed. They used their own labor and they put it together. And we had one boat captain. I think the gentleman's name is Mr. Raymond Montroc, alias Captain Lolo. And then you had a bus operator, Abraham Fatman, who helped us. We took, because the fishers prepared their own anchors at one point. So we got that, brought it on. The bus helped us to take it to the main jetty. And the boat captain helped us to bring all the items out in the ocean. We went about 4 miles off Soufra, and the guys launched the FAD.
Now, on to another part of
the SLP women were there with them that night.
I see. But on to another aspect within the blue economy, and that of the management of the marine space. Now, Soufra
Yes.
for a very long time has had the Soufra
A
Marine
very unique thing in
Management
the Soufra management, that's
area.
right.
Now, that, of course, had been very well praised across the world, in fact, I think, as a model
Internationally, that's right.
yeah, for management
And
of
then
of
they
the marine
seem to
space.
have just put it aside. The office was closed for a long period. Of late, I have been told that a new chairperson was appointed, but the SMMA requires significant attention because it is a unique institution. There are significant benefits to having that institution. I believe that we have room to link with other international institutions. We can also add not only to the blue economy, but also to our basic tourism. And we have not explored what we can do with SMMA. And it's an institution that we will pay a lot more attention to.
But you're saying right now it's not operating, it's closed.
Yes, but I'm told that a new chairperson was appointed in recent times.
But in terms of persons who would use the various sites, so they're no longer paying anything through the SMMA.
Well, that is where the breakdown came up. So as of today, I cannot tell you what is happening at present. But there was a closure of the office for a long period of time. And as you know, as long as the office is closed, then people will be doing what they want.
Now, another very important institution within the context of Soufra, that of the Soufra Regional Development Foundation. It's been touted as a success story on occasion because of the fact that it has revenue coming in from the sulfur springs and the jetty and what have you. What is the situation right now, though, with the Regional Development Foundation, given the difficulties with tourism?
You might have heard the program Tongal Tuesday, and I was very clear out there that at the moment the Soufra Development Foundation, Regional Development Foundation, is not being managed properly. There is the monies that were left there by the last administration has, to me, virtually been squandered. And you have an institution that is not serving the people of St. Lucia, of Soufra, as it ought to. Because the Soufra Foundation, when it was properly managed, provided a school subsidy, a bursary to some of the children of some of the citizens of Soufra who were not able to send their children to school and get the book supplies, school supplies, and so on. This year, for example, they couldn't do that. Or if they did it to a handful of their friends. The resources that were left with the Essential Labour Party administration, the past vice chair was saying we left about $1.8 million in cash at the bank and receivables of about $1 million. We are now being told that the foundation is cash strapped. The government, the United Workers' Party administration has actually used that foundation as an ATM. And we need to bring proper management and good governance to that institution. It is a very important institution for the development of Soufra.
Now, of course, in terms of how that is going to happen, though, I mean, is it that something that the government can step into? How is it going to be? How would you affect that?
We have to look at the structure again in terms of the instrument that was used when it was formed. You have to look at that instrument again and see whether it is the most appropriate instrument. We have to look at the composition of the board. The board have to be more representative of the stakeholders in the town. You have communities not being represented. You have, for example, if you are going to have proper representation on the board, you need to have persons representing Fonjalib, that is at the foot of the Piton, the base of the Piton, where the people are, where the Gros Piton hike is taking place. You have people of Mont-Lacroix on the other side. You need people from Soufra town, from Fauché-Jacques, from Chateau Belay. You need people from the hotel industry. You need people from the heritage sites. You need the young people. You need different representatives on that board, but you also need people with the right skill sets to manage this institution, because it's a very important institution, because you're receiving resources from the harbor, from Sulphur Springs, and from the Piton. Fauché-Jacques has its own natural areas that could be part of that system. So there is a room for us to really look at what we have, and what we have in Soufra. This Regional Development Foundation is an institution that other parts of Soufra, of St. Lucia should be looking at, because we have some natural assets that that are owned naturally by the people, and we need to be able to harness those assets, look how we can monetize it, get the resources from it, revenue from it, so that we can develop other parts of the country.
And of course, you're raising that, and a lot of assets which are sitting down, not doing anything in Soufra.
That's right.
I'm thinking as well of the old copra factory.
It is sitting there.
That at this point in time?
It is still there at the moment. There was one person maybe doing a bit of oil in there, but that whole area is sitting there, not utilized, and we can do so many different things with it. So we have to look at our assets. We have to go around with fresh eyes, look at our assets, and see how best we can utilize them.
Now, of course, all of this is going to require a lot of resources, and with a country that is where it is at right about now, Ms. Hippolyte, we of course at a very difficult juncture. We're just trying to climb out of the COVID pandemic and the economic situation that it has caused as well. Where are we going to be getting
the government have put itself in a way where they have borrowed, more than we can afford to pay. So we really have to be able to sit down and see how we're going to deal with these debts that we have. And I believe very clearly, we have to sit down as a people, as a Central Labour Party government. We have to sit down and say, you see all these debts people, all those people who are piling debt, some of these institutions are very much aware that they should be assessing some of those requests from the government in a more realistic manner. So sometimes they think that as long as it is government that they will get paid. And you see it in terms of even some of the companies that are providing services. They are providing the services and thinking that tomorrow morning there will be a government to pay them millions of dollars if they say the Fresh Start and all these companies that are just working with the government to milk the people. So we have to really sit down and say what the thing is, and call it what it is, and make hard
You're raising it,
decisions.
of course, within the context of a lot of these state corporations as well as these quasi-state corporations. I mean, we just spoke about the SMMA, the Suffra Regional Development Foundation, but as well, you can think of others like maybe Invest St. Lucia or the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority. They all are at a point right now where they, in fact, are spending quite a lot of money. The National Insurance Corporation, which you also were responsible of. We saw it being used to effectively try to bail out the government from its responsibilities of income support and taking that on as their own debt. Is this effectively hiding a bigger story at play when we look at some of these organizations, these state institutions?
For all these institutions, SLASPA, for example, you have a board. And I think it's the institution, if I could remember, and I'm subject to correction, who reports to two ministers, sort of thing.
Yes, that's correct. Minister of Finance and Communications and Works, or Infrastructure.
And Communications and Works. Now you have the management team on that board who ought to be strong and technical to analyze a proposal. Now, when you have a proposal where we could have had an airport without taking any debt, to one where we have had to take almost $500 million of debt. Now, what we have to look at is what was the recommendation of the management team, and then whether it is a management team who made the recommendation, but you have the minister, and then you have the cabinet of ministers who have moved away from that proposal and decided instead to go for debt and put a country in debt for $500 million. But that debt is now, I'm certain, guaranteed by the people of St. Lucia, because SLASPA on its own cannot pay that. So if they cannot pay tomorrow morning, then they will expect the taxpayers to shoulder that debt. Now, the challenge that we have up to now, which is we have not seen the beginning, the start of this thing, but where are the loans coming from? Is it coming from local institutions? They need to be put on notice that if they did not do their proper due diligence and did not assess their projects properly, that they will be holding the bag. We need to signal to them that they have responsibilities, that they must not think that because the thing was guaranteed by the government, that automatically they'll be getting paid. We have to take a hard line with the persons who are in bed with the government in terms of piling debt on the backs of St. Lucians. We need to tell them, as an institution, you need to do your own due diligence. And are you giving a loan of $500 million to something that should cost $300 million? And then what is your responsibility versus what is the responsibility of the guarantor? We have to speak a different language so that people do what they're supposed to do.
And of course, you're talking about that $600 million for the international airport. Very, very significant amount of money at this time to be spending with a sector which is grappling so much with a reduction of numbers. We're not too sure when we're going to be seeing a return to the types of figures that we were seeing in the past, pre-COVID. Very, very risky time to taking this investment, isn't it?
Well, yes, but up to now, I'm not sure that there's much work that has happened on the ground for that. And in all fairness, should this government actually start this project now, or wait until the people if the people give them a fresh mandate, then the people sanction it. But they ought to wait.
It started. We're seeing piling going on.
Well, yes. And that's what I'm saying. It is reckless.
Mr. Hippolyte, we have about 5 minutes left, of course, for the program to go.
Oh.
The National Insurance Corporation. I just want to touch on that a little bit because it's been very, very topical in the news regarding decisions such as Cabot, right, and an idea to provide to a third party, that is Cabot St. Lucia, for purchase of lands for it to do a development when the NIC has in fact been on a record saying that they wanted to, in fact, purchase the land outright. What happened there? What could have gone wrong in a situation like that? Because it doesn't seem that the decision that has been made was in the interest of the pensioners of the NIC.
Well, maybe, definitely not. What you don't have is the information. Again, what is the recommendation of the technical team, which is the director and his team, and then what is the recommendation? What did they recommend to the board, and what did the board recommend? Because the buck stops with the board. The buck stops with the board, and that's why I was saying that management must always remember to document their recommendations. Now they've taken, as you rightly said, the board is supposed to be there working in the interest of the pensioners. But at this point, did they allow politics? Did they allow the prime minister? Because later on, we've been told it was the prime minister who brought the investor in, or not an investor because he came with no monies. It's the prime minister who brought the gentleman in. But look at how the NIC lost an opportunity to develop the north of the country and to get the returns. Because as you rightly know, the investment opportunities in the world is not as open and available as we had before. The returns are not the same. So when you have an opportunity like that, you then had to say, if it was such a good opportunity and you really wanted the skill sets of the persons or whatever, then you had to come into some other arrangement instead of giving them a loan of $40 million and then shouting that they paid you $40 million and $2 million extra, which is so ridiculous. But at the same time, you've given away all our lands and then do such damage to our heritage. It is not representing the people when you do that.
Now, you were formerly as well Minister for...
and preventing people from accessing all the beaches and so on. So we have to come back with the mess and damage of the United Workers' Party. As the National Labour Party government have to be coming back and trying.
Looks like, again, we're having a bit of difficulty with the internet feed here. Our apologies for that. It might not be on our side.
All these broken things. Was that really you have?
Ms. Hippolyte, are you there with us? Sorry, we just lost you for just a bit. I think because of maybe the data service.
I am there with you. Yeah.
You're here back. Okay, wonderful. I was about to ask you, as my parting question, you were the former Minister for Investment. You had responsibility for Invest St. Lucia. And we've seen a lot of difficulty with a number of projects which were supposed to have been on stream. I'm thinking of one in Sabwisha in Choiseul. We were hearing about another project with range development at Black Bay. There were some others as well. And of course, we've now gotten DSH as an investment. And a lot of those developments, we don't know the full terms of the agreements which have been signed on to. Anybody coming in at this point in time and having to perhaps figure themselves out with respect to a number of these development agreements may very well have a lot of shocks and surprises, which they're not even aware of.
Well, yes. For example, when you take the DSH one, for example, we have to look at this document to see how we get this land back to the people of St. Lucia. We have to look at it. We cannot run away from it. But once and for all, we have to ensure that we look at the documents. Whatever the documents are, whoever has it, Invest St. Lucia would have it. The persons who sign it, Bradley, Prime Minister, the cabinet, they should have the document, should be there. It's just that they feel that they ought not to share it with the general public. And that has not been fair because the cabinet and the government is representing the people. And if you're representing the people and you're genuine, then you should not be keeping information away from the people.
And parting question, Ms. Hippolyte, regarding healthcare. Now, I believe there was a promise of a new polyclinic for Suffra or new hospital for Suffra by 2020. Of course, that hasn't quite happened. I don't think there's been any breaking ground on that. What is the situation with regard to that? Do you know of any details moving forward for the Suffra Hospital Polyclinic? What's going on there?
Well, as you know, the Suffra, there's nothing new. There's no new structures, as I'm aware. What needs, we have to be very realistic as we go forward. There are certain things we definitely have to improve both primary and secondary healthcare in Suffra. There's no question about that. I do not know at this moment whether we can afford a new structure, or whether the other key issue for me is whether that structure is compromised to the extent that you need a new structure. So coming in, that is the first thing. I'm told that there's a report that has been done already. Again, I have no access to it. We have to assess that and then determine what is the next step. But now I think more than anything else, we need new services. You know, each time I look at a birth certificate of one of the young people now, they are born in Beaufort. At some point or another, we'll have nobody born in Suffra. That's a huge challenge for us. The Suffra Hospital, as I know, I was born there. My sister was a nurse. People used to have the children in the Suffra Hospital, and we need to cause that to happen again. There are some basic services. You have Suffra is a tourism capital. You have all the diving taking place at Anchasney and so on. We need to improve the services provided, the health services provided in the Suffra Hospital. So we have to look at the equipments. We have to get the assistance of the Dental and Medical Association and so on. What equipments do we need? What type of technical staff do we need? We definitely need to improve the services, healthcare services in Suffra.
Ms. Hippolyte,
but I don't know as a government, where we have to go and fix up OKEU, we have to go and fix up St. Jude's. I don't know whether we'll have any resources to go and put a new structure for Suffra at this time. We have to be very
But looks like, again, that we're having some technical issues here as we are trying to end the program. Yes, Mr. Hippolyte, we are pretty much out of time. Could you give us some parting words, please, at this point?
Well, the St. Lucia Labour Party is ready to serve the people of Suffra. I am ready to serve the people of Suffra. Philippe J. is ready to be the Prime Minister. I'm asking all of Suffra and all of St. Lucia to give us an opportunity for you to have a better tomorrow. We are there to serve you. We are willing to serve you. We are able, we are capable, and most of all, we have your interests at heart. We are committed to putting you first in your country. Give us this opportunity. May God bless you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Emma Hippolyte. And